The ocean at dawn was a canvas of shifting silver and blue, its surface shimmering beneath the first rays of a rising sun. Far below that glistening skin, in the quiet depths where light softened into mystery, a drama was unfolding, one of life's most profound miracles. A female orca, massive yet graceful, she had carried her calf for nearly 18 months, an arduous journey of patience and endurance. Her body bore the weight of creation, and with each passing tide, she had grown slower, her swimming steadier, her songs quieter. But now, in these still waters, surrounded by the protective circle of her pod, she was ready. The ocean, her companions formed a living shield, a barrier of black and white bodies swirling around her in careful, deliberate motion. They kept predators at bay, but more importantly, they lent her their presence, a chorus of clicks and whistles, a reassurance that she was not alone. In the realm of orcas, birth was not merely an individual act, it was a communal celebration, a call. The moment arrived in silence. With a shiver of muscle and a surge of effort, the mother arched her powerful body, and from her emerged a fragile form. The calf was small compared to her, yet immense compared to human perception, already 2 meters long. Its skin a softer shade of grey than the striking black and white of its elders. It struggled, awkward and trembling, its flukes folding and unfolding as though testing the waters, for the calf did not yet understand the ocean's command. Without it, exhaled instinctively, releasing the fluid from its lungs, and then inhaled sharply. A jet of mist rose into the air, sparkling like diamonds in the morning light. The sound was small, but it was everything. Life had begun. The pod erupted into song. High-pitched whistles, pulsing clicks, and deep resonant calls filled the water, a cacophony of joy that reverberated through the sea like a chorus of bells. Orcas are not silent witnesses. They celebrate, they welcome, they honor. The calf's arrival was not just its mother's triumph, but the triumph of the entire family. Every voice, every note was a declaration. You belong. You are one of us. The mother circled her newborn, brushing her body against its small form, guiding it close to her side. She was enormous compared to the fragile creature she had birthed, yet her movements were impossibly gentle. Her fin cut the water like a careful hand, ensuring that the calf never drifted far. The calf pressed against her, seeking warmth, safety, and guidance in a world that was vast and overwhelming. The ocean, once an indifferent expanse, now seemed alive with intimacy. Sunlight poured down in golden shafts, filtering through the water and illuminating mother and child as though spotlighting them on a stage. Around them, the pods swam in synchrony, a ballet of guardianship. Every member knew their role: to protect, to nurture, to guide. Hours passed. The calf, though clumsy, began to mimic its mother's movements. It rose to breathe, splashing at the surface with tiny bursts of energy. Its tail struck the water awkwardly, but each attempt was stronger than the last. The mother hovered close, her gaze fixed on her calf, with a devotion that needed no words, no language. Love was carried in every nudge, every protective sweep of her fin, every careful rise to the surface. This was not simply survival. This was devotion written into the very fabric of nature. The calf could not fend for itself. It relied entirely on its mother's milk, her strength, her wisdom. She would nurse it for more than a year, providing the fatty, rich sustenance that would allow it to grow strong. She would teach it the paths of the ocean, the rhythms of migration, the secrets of the hunt. And through it all, she would sacrifice her own comfort, her own body, to ensure that this new life endured. As night fell over the ocean, the scene transformed into something otherworldly. The water glowed faintly with bioluminescent plankton, tiny sparks of light that trailed every movement. The mother's immense shape glided like a shadow through a sea of stars, while the calf stayed close, glowing faintly as though touched by stardust. It was as if the universe itself had lit candles to honor its birth. The pods sang again, their voices carrying through the darkness, weaving melodies older than history. Somewhere far away, another pod might have heard and answered. In the vast, interconnected ocean, the calf's birth was part of a symphony greater than itself, a reminder that life, even fragile and fleeting, resonated across endless waters. For the mother, the exhaustion of birth melted into something else: pride. Her body ached, her muscles throbbed, but her heart surged with determination. She had given life, and she would defend it with every ounce of strength she possessed. The ocean was dangerous, filled with predators and storms, but as long as she lived, she would stand between her calf and harm. And so, beneath the stars and the shimmering sea, the miracle of birth was complete. A fragile calf, no longer just an idea in the dark womb of the ocean, swam beside the most important being it would ever know. And a mother, vast as the sea itself, began a journey of love, sacrifice, an unyielding devotion, one that would test her spirit in ways no being, human or animal, could ever truly comprehend. The waves rolled on, eternal and unbroken, carrying their story into the night. The first breaths had been taken, the first cries sung into the sea. But birth was not the end of the story, it was only the fragile beginning. The calf, though alive, was vulnerable. Its muscles were weak, its instincts half-formed, its sense of the world no more than shadows in a vast cathedral of blue. For this tiny being, survival depended entirely on its mother, and she, immense and steadfast, rose to the task with a devotion written into the very marrow of her kind. Every few minutes, she guided her calf to the surface, pressing gently with her rostrum until its small blowhole cleared the water. A thin plume of spray shot upward, followed by a shuddering inhale, sometimes clumsy, sometimes uncertain. Then the calf would sink again, drifting back toward the shelter of her body. Each ascent was not just a lesson in breathing, but a rhythm, life, as most basic rhythm imprinted upon it by her patience. The ocean is not forgiving to the weak. Predators lurked in the depths, sharks, waiting for any sign of frailty. Opportunistic males of rival pods who might see the calf as competition or prey. Even the relentless waves themselves could be merciless, battering small bodies against currents too strong to resist. The mother knew this, not with thought, but with instinct, sharpened by generations. So she hovered, always between her calf and the unknown, a living wall of protection. At night, while the pod rested in loose formation, the mother stayed vigilant, her body barely stilled, her eyes ever watchful. The calf pressed close against her, its skin still soft and pale. Now and then it trembled, uncertain in the darkness, and she answered with a soft whistle, a call meant only for it. In those notes was reassurance. I am here, you are safe. On the second day, the calf began to grow bolder. It flicked its tail with greater force, darting a few feet away before circling back, always returning to her side like a tethered star. Sometimes it dove beneath her belly, as though hiding in the shadow of her vastness, then reappeared with a burst of energy. These small rebellions were not disobedience, they were practice, and she, infinitely patient, allowed them, watching each attempt with the quiet pride of a teacher who knows that every mistake is part of growth. Feeding was another ritual. Her milk, rich with fat, flowed into its hungry mouth, coating its body from within with the energy it would need to thrive. Nursing in the open sea was no simple act. She had to adjust her movements, slow her pace, and ensure that no sudden current disrupted the calf's grip. But she endured the inconvenience, even the risk, because her child's strength mattered more than her comfort. The pod, too, played its role. Orca society is matrilineal, and calves are the treasure of all. Aunts, grandmothers, even unrelated females joined the dance of guardianship. They swam at the perimeter, scanning for threats. They echoed the mother's calls, surrounding the calf in a cocoon of voices. Sometimes, when the mother grew weary, another female swam close, letting the calf brush against her side as though to say, "We share this burden, we share this joy." Above them, gulls wheeled and cried, oblivious to the drama beneath the surface. To them, the ocean was only a hunting ground, its mysteries hidden below the waves. But if they could have seen, if they could have understood, they would have witnessed something far greater than survival. The raw tenderness of a creature whose heart was as vast as the sea itself. By the third day, the calf had found its rhythm. Its breaths were stronger, more confident. It surfaced beside its mother in synchrony, exhaling and inhaling as though the two were one body, one breath. Sometimes, in moments of play, it slapped its tiny tail against the water, sending up a splash that caught the light of the sun. The mother responded with a low rumble, a note of approval that vibrated through the calf's bones. These days were fragile, fleeting. For the mother, each moment was etched into memory. She knew, though she could not name it, that time was a thief. One day, her calf would swim without her, hunt without her, perhaps even live beyond her years. But in these first days, when the calf was small and the bond unbreakable, she savored every second. The ocean, too, seemed to conspire in the tenderness, Sunlight filtered through the surface in golden ribbons, wrapping mother and calf in warmth. Schools of fish scattered around them, glittering like confetti at a celebration. Even the currents seemed gentler, cradling them in their embrace. And yet, beneath the beauty, there lingered a shadow. Life in the sea is perilous. Illness, predators, starvation, these threats never vanish. The mother's heart, though filled with joy, carried an unspoken fear that her child's time might be shorter than her dreams for it. That fear would never leave her, but it was the weight of that fear that made her love fiercer, her care more relentless. For now, however, there was only the present, a calf growing stronger each hour, and a mother who had given her entire being to protect it. Together, they moved through the endless blue, two souls bound by blood, by breath, by love. The days of tender care had only just begun. For several days, the ocean seemed kind. The calf swam closer to its mother's side with growing confidence, its tiny body learning to rise and dive with the rhythm of the sea. The pod songs continued, weaving together a soundscape of comfort and celebration. To the untrained eye, all was well. Yet nature often hides its cruelties, not in storms or predators, but in silence. And silence had begun to creep into the calf's fragile existence. It started with subtle signs. The calf tired more quickly than it should. Where once it had darted playfully ahead, now it lagged behind, pressing into its mother's flank as though seeking strength. Its breaths grew shorter, sharper, no longer the steady rhythm of a young life learning to master the surface, but a shallow gasp that carried undertones of strain. The mother noticed immediately. Her instincts were sharper than any human physician, her awareness of her calf absolute. She circled closer, nudging it upward more frequently, ensuring it did not miss a breath. She sang low, soothing calls into the water, her voice resonant with both love and concern. But her songs could not cure what had taken root. No predator pursued them. No storm raged across the sea. The threat came from within a hidden weakness, perhaps an infection unseen, or a flaw carried from the womb. The ocean holds many mysteries, and even among the most resilient, life is fragile. The calf's body, though new, was already fighting a battle it could not explain. The pod sensed the shift as well. Their celebratory tones softened, replaced by lower, more somber calls. They adjusted their formation, drawing closer around the mother and calf, as though their presence alone might ward off the unknown. The waters filled with their voices, an ancient chorus of support. Yet beneath it all, an unease lingered in understanding that not every fight could be won by numbers or song. At the surface, the calf struggled. Each rise for air became a labor, each exhale weaker than the last. The spray that once shot proudly into the air now sputtered, collapsing into the waves. Sometimes it lingered too long beneath the surface, forcing the mother to push it up with her snout. She did so gently, but urgently, her own heart pounding with the fear that one missed breath could be its last. In moments of desperation, she tried to encourage play, circling in slow arcs, brushing her fin against its side, as if reminding it of the joy of movement. But the calf's energy waned. Its small flukes flapped weakly, then stilled, leaving it drifting like a leaf in the current. To an outsider, the ocean remained beautiful sunlight, shimmering, waves rolling, fish scattering in silver clouds. But to the mother, every ray of light only illuminated the shadows deepening around her calf. She understood, though she could not name it. Something was wrong, and love alone might not be enough. Humans have documented such moments. Scientists observing pods from afar have recorded the subtle changes in behavior, the way a mother grows restless, her swimming frantic, her calls constant. Some dismiss it as instinct, but those who listen closely hear something else. Grief forming in advance, sorrow whispered into the water before death arrives. Still, the mother refused to surrender. She pressed her body against the calf, lifting it whenever it faltered, guiding it through each breath, as though her strength could transfer into its failing lungs. Her world narrowed to this single mission: keep it alive, keep it breathing. The pod swam in silence now, their celebrations stilled. They too understood the cruelty of the sea, the razor-thin line between life and death. Some had carried calves that never survived their first month. Some had lost siblings, companions, friends. They knew, and yet they stayed, loyal to the mother, honoring her fight with their presence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sea into hues of fire and gold. The calf pressed tightly against its mother one last time that day. She lifted it gently to the surface, watching the spray of its exhale drift into the glowing air. For a moment, she let herself believe that tomorrow would be better, that the ocean would grant mercy, that her child would heal. But deep within, a shadow gnawed at her heart. The threat was silent, but it was real. The battle had begun, and though she would fight with every breath, she could not escape the truth. Sometimes, even the strongest love cannot shield against fate. The sea rolled on, indifferent to her fear. The dawn broke gently over the horizon, painting the sea in strokes of rose and gold. For most creatures, it was another beginning, another day of survival. But for one mother, Orca, the sun carried no promise only dread. She had spent the night pressed against her calf, feeling the tremors of its weakening body, hearing the fragile whistle that escaped its throat whenever it surfaced for air. Each sound was a reminder that time was slipping away. The calf's movements were no longer playful. Where once it had darted and splashed with youthful vigor, now it floated listlessly, nudged forward only by its mother's guiding touch. Its breaths were uneven, shallow bursts of mist that dissolved almost instantly into the morning air. The mother lifted it carefully, again and again, her rostrum steady beneath its failing body, as though sheer persistence might convince it to keep living. Around them, the pods swam in solemn silence. The joyous songs of the birth were gone. Now, their calls were slow, mournful tones, an echo of ancient sorrow. They knew, though none would interfere, the calf's battle was nearly lost. Orcapods have witnessed this before, and in the dark corridors of their memory, they carried the knowledge that death is as much a part of the sea as life itself. The mother refused to yield. Every breath her calf missed, she corrected. Every time it sank too deep, she dove, pushing it upward with desperate strength. She circled it tirelessly, nudging, encouraging, pleading in low, trembling calls that filled the water. Her voice was a song of denial, a melody shaped from hope, heartbreak, and fear. But the ocean does not bargain. By midday, the calf's energy had drained almost entirely. It lay across her snout like a rag of shadow, its flukes drooping, its once bright eyes glazed with exhaustion. The mother lifted it one final time to the surface. For a moment, the calf's body shuddered as it exhaled a weak, the broken spray of mist that caught the sunlight like a fleeting jewel. Then it inhaled shallowly, too shallow. Its body quivered once more, and then stilled. Silence fell. The waves lapped gently, indifferent to the tragedy unfolding beneath them. The mother remained motionless, holding her calf against her rostrum, waiting. She nudged it softly, then harder, trying to rouse it. She circled it in small arcs, pushing from beneath, urging it upward again and again, as if she could reignite the spark of life with sheer determination. But the calf's body was limp, its weight heavy in the water. Its breaths were gone. The mother's calls changed. No longer the urgent, pleading notes of hope, but long, drawn-out wails that vibrated through the ocean. They carried pain, unmistakable and raw, resonating across miles of water. It was grief, pure and unfiltered, echoing in frequencies so low that even distant pods might feel it in their bones. Airpod responded, their voices rising in a chorus of sorrow. They circled her loosely, giving space but offering solidarity. No one challenged her, no one rushed her, for they understood that mourning is sacred. In their world, as in ours, love does not vanish at death's edge. It deepens, sharpens, becomes unbearable. Hours passed. Still she clung to the body. She refused to let it sink, diving beneath it whenever it drifted too low, lifting it again and again toward the light. The calf's lifeless form bobbed on the surface, but to the mother, it was still her child. Denial was not ignorance. It was love refusing to accept the cruelty of nature. The sun dipped lower, staining the sea with crimson fire. Still, she held on. Her body trembled from exhaustion. Her breaths came heavy, but she would not release the calf. Other mothers in the pod swam near, offering their presence, their voices, their empathy. Yet the burden was hers alone. Night fell, and with it came silence broken only by her soft cries. Bioluminescent plankton lit the water around her, glowing faintly as she carried the still body through the darkness. It was as though the stars themselves had fallen into the ocean to witness her vigil. At last, in the dead of night, she paused. Her movements slowed, her body heavy with fatigue. She gazed at her calf's motionless form, brushing it one last time with her fin, a touch filled with tenderness and surrender. Then, as the currents pulled, the calf slipped gently from her grasp. She dove beneath it, circling, pushing, one final attempt to hold it against the inevitable. But the ocean claimed it. The calf drifted downward, into the endless blue-black, sinking toward a world without light. The mother followed briefly, circling the body 3 times, as if marking its grave. Before rising back toward the surface, her heart weighted with a grief deeper than the sea itself. Her cry pierced the night, a long mournful call that traveled far beyond her pod. A lament carried on the water to any who would hear. It was both farewell and testimony that love, even in the face of death, endures. The calf was gone, but the mother remained, her devotion carved forever into the silence of the ocean. And in her sorrow, she revealed something eternal, that the capacity for love is not bound by species, nor limited by survival. It is the most powerful current in the sea. The calf's breath had ceased, yet the ocean still moved, indifferent, eternal. Most creatures, faced with death, would abandon the body. Survival demands it. The sea demands it. But the mother orca did not. She could not. Her heart, heavy with grief, refused to surrender the child she had carried, nursed, and cherished. And so began a vigil unlike any other. She pressed her rostrum beneath the calf's limp body, lifting it gently toward the surface. The weight was unnatural. Now dead flesh does not move with the same grace as the living. The calf's body sagged, rolling awkwardly, threatening to slip away. Yet the mother adjusted, balancing, carrying, pushing it upward every time it began to sink. She refused to let the current take it. Each breath she took was heavier than the last, but still she held on. For her, the calf was not gone. It was still her child, deserving of care, of presence, of love. Orcas do not bury their dead, nor do they speak elegies, but this mother performed the only ritual she could, the ritual of refusal, the ritual of love that endures beyond life. The pod swam beside her, their voices low and mournful. They did not interfere, did not force her to release the body. Instead, they accompanied her vigil, guardians not of life but of grief. Their dark shapes formed a circle in the water, a silent acknowledgement that mourning is as sacred as birth. Hours turned into a day. Fishermen far above noticed her. Through binoculars they saw the immense black and white figure balancing a small, grey body on her head. Some gasped, others wept quietly, for in that sight was something deeply human, something that blurred the boundary between our species and hers. Scientists would later call it epimelectic behavior, the caring of the living for the dead. But those who witnessed it in that moment knew better. It was love. The mother grew weaker, her movements slower. Carrying a dead calf across the sea was no small task. Each mile required energy she could not spare, for she herself had not eaten. But hunger meant nothing. Exhaustion meant nothing. All that mattered was that her child did not sink into darkness alone. Day bled into night, and still she carried the body. The calf's form had begun to change, the color dulling, the skin loosening beneath the salt water's touch. The smell of decay would have driven most animals away, yet she pressed closer, as though refusing to believe what her senses told her. Her bond was not with the body's decay, but with the life it had once held, the memory it still carried. For 3 days, she bore it across the surface, lifting and pushing, nudging and balancing. Sometimes the body slipped from her rostrum, sinking deeper into the blue. In those moments, her massive frame shuddered with urgency as she dove beneath, rescuing it from the abyss, lifting it back toward the light. Each rescue was an act of defiance, as though she could rescue it not just from sinking, but from death itself. The pod slowed their migration, staying with her though the delay meant hunger and risk. They sang quietly, their calls low and haunting, filling the ocean with a dirge that echoed for miles. Other pods might have heard and answered, spreading the sound of grief across the sea. Scientists who later studied such cases would marvel. Some whale mothers have carried their dead calves for weeks, even months. They endure hunger, exhaustion, and danger, driven not by instinct alone, but by a devotion that defies biology. It is grief embodied, love refusing to yield. On the 5th day, the mother's movements grew unsteady. Her body tilted as she swam, her dorsal fin cutting the waves at a weary angle. Yet still she lifted the calf, still she carried it. Her eyes, dark and expressive, never left the body. In those eyes was something unmistakable, a refusal to let go, even when the cost was unbearable. At dusk, As the horizon burned with fading fire, the calf slipped once more from her grasp. She dove immediately, her massive body cutting through the water with desperate force. She pushed beneath the limp form, raising it high, breaking the surface with a splash. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then she let out a deep, tremulous cry that shook the sea around her. It was not the call of survival. It was the call of mourning, a sound heavy with longing and loss. It carried across the waves, resonating in tones humans could scarcely imagine, vibrating through the bones of fish, echoing through the endless cathedral of the sea. Night fell again. The stars reflected upon the water, and bioluminescence glowed faintly around her movements. She swam on, the body of her calf balanced delicately against her. She could not sleep, she could not stop. Love, relentless and unyielding, drove her forward even as her strength faltered. Those who saw her would never forget. To them, she was not just an animal, she was a mother, grieving as deeply as any human might. Her vigil was a story written not in words but in waves, a testament to the truth that grief is not ours alone. And so, for days uncounted, the mother refused to let go. The sea had long since accepted the calf into its silence, yet the mother still refused. Day after day, she carried her child's lifeless body across the surface, lifting, balancing, nudging, an endless ritual of devotion. By now, more than a week had passed since the final breath, but to her, time had lost meaning. There was only one truth: her calf would not be abandoned. Each morning, when the sun cast its golden light upon the water, the mother rose with her burden. Fishermen who ventured into these waters began to notice her more frequently. They saw the towering black and white form, her massive rostrum holding the limp grey calf aloft. Some pointed in silence, others lowered their binoculars with tears in their eyes. They had come to fish, yet they found themselves witnesses to a love so raw it humbled them. Word spread. Scientists aboard research vessels recorded her vigil with hushed reverence. They noted the changes in the calf's body, the signs of decay, the slow sinking whenever the mother's strength faltered. And yet, each time, she dove beneath, rescuing it again and again. The researchers documented her behavior as prolonged epimelectic care, but even in their reports, their voices trembled. They knew what they were watching was not just biology, was grief. Her pod remained with her, though hunger gnawed at them. Orcas traveled great distances in search of food, but now they slowed their migration, moving only as far as the mother would allow. The calves of other mothers played at the surface, their splashes echoing the innocence of life, but they too swam more quietly, sensing the weight of sorrow that hung in the water. The pod's calls, once celebratory, had become a mournful choir, their voices resonating through the deepened tones that sounded like prayers. At night, the mother's vigil became otherworldly. The ocean surface shimmered with starlight, mirrored by the glow of bioluminescent plankton stirred by her movements. She swam slowly, the calf's body draped across her head, glowing faintly in the sparkling trail. To any who might have watched, it was as if she carried her child through a sea of stars, unwilling to let even the darkness take it alone. 10 days, 10 long, unbroken days. Her body weakened. She had not hunted. She had not fed. Every dive was slower, every breath heavier. Yet she refused to relinquish her vigil. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, exhaustion pulled at her muscles, but her love was stronger than any instinct for self-preservation. For 10 days, she chose grief over survival, love over logic. On the 7th day, a storm swept across the sea. Waves rose, white-capped and violent. Winds howled across the water. Many creatures sought shelter, diving deep to escape the chaos. But the mother did not leave her calf. She fought the storm itself, lifting the body again and again above the crashing surf. Each wave tore at her balance, threatening to wrench the calf away, but she persevered. Her strength seemed superhuman, or perhaps simply maternal. On the 9th day, the calf's body had deteriorated further. Its skin loosened, its form less recognizable. Yet the mother's behavior did not change. To her, it was still her child. She still carried it, still circled it, still sang to it. Her low calls vibrated through the water, a mixture of sorrow and devotion. A song no less beautiful for being unbearably tragic. Scientists listening with hydrophones captured those sounds. They later described them as prolonged mourning calls, notes that carried patterns of grief eerily similar to human laments, but words could never truly convey what they heard. The ocean was filled with her voice, a cry that said, "I cannot let go. Not yet." By the 10th day, she was visibly weakened. Her movements had slowed to a crawl, her body thin from hunger. Still, she bore the weight. Still, she carried her calf across the sea. Her pod remained nearby, steadfast companions in her grief, though they too had grown weary. Their loyalty was extraordinary. Their willingness to sacrifice migration for her pain, a testament to the bonds that bound them all. And yet, even the strongest love cannot hold back eternity. On the evening of the 10th day, the mother's strength failed. She lifted the calf once more, balancing it delicately on her rostrum, watching as the fading sunlight painted the waves crimson and gold. For a moment, the calf seemed almost alive again, its form glistening under the sky. She circled it, pressing close, her eyes never leaving its face. Then, as her body trembled from exhaustion, the calf slipped. This time, she dove slower. She followed it downward, deeper and deeper, her massive shape moving like a shadow in the fading light. She nudged the body, pushed it, tried to lift it, but her muscles shook, her strength gone. The calf sank lower, into the dark embrace of the sea. She circled it once, twice, a third time. Her voice broke into the water, a final cry of farewell that reverberated across the depths. Then she rose back, toward the surface, alone. The vigil was over. The sea, eternal and unfeeling, rolled on with its endless tides. To most who watched from above, the event might have seemed over. The calf was gone, claimed by the depths. But for the mother, grief was not a moment, it was a journey. And even when her strength had given out, her heart refused to let go without one final act of devotion. For 10 days she had borne her child against the will of the ocean. 10 days of hunger, exhaustion, and relentless love. Now, as the calf sank into the abyss, she hovered in the water, circling the spot where it had disappeared. Her massive body, once so powerful, now seemed heavy with sorrow. Yet she would not abandon the place. Slowly, she dove. The water grew darker, colder, pressing around her like a shroud. Below her, the small body drifted downward, pale and limp, slipping ever deeper into the shadows. She caught up, brushing it gently with her fin, pushing it upward once, twice, as if to rouse it, but the calf no longer stirred. Its journey had ended. Still, she circled, one wide loop, then another. 3, 4, 5 times she revolved around the body, her movements steady and deliberate, like a ritual carved into her very being. Perhaps it was instinct, perhaps something beyond it, but in her circles, there was meaning. It was as if she was marking the ocean floor itself as her calf's resting place, drawing invisible lines of love upon the sea. Her voice rose, low and haunting. It vibrated through the depths, resonating in frequencies that touched not just her pod, but the bones of distant creatures who would never see her face. The cry was long, sustained, filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed to fracture the silence of the ocean itself. To human ears, it might have sounded like a funeral dirge. To the sea, it was a mother's farewell. Her pod lingered nearby, keeping their distance, honoring her solitude. They swam in slow orbits, their calls muted but supportive. They too mourned, not just for the calf, but for her, for the pain that had etched itself into every movement of her body. They would not rush her, they would not drag her forward. Mourning had its own pace, and they respected it. The calf continued to sink, its body fading into the depths, where no light reached. The mother followed, until the water grew too dark, too heavy. She pressed her rostrum against the limp form one last time, a touch that lingered, gentle and sorrowful. Then, with a shuddering movement, she let it slip away. The calf sank further, swallowed by the ocean's endless black. The mother remained for a long moment, suspended in the water, staring into the void. Her body was still, her eyes fixed, as though memorizing the place where her child would rest. Then, slowly, she turned upward. Breaking the surface, she exhaled with a spray of mist that glittered in the last rays of twilight. The sound was heavy, ragged, a sigh, a cry, a release. She had carried her child longer than any instinct demanded, longer than reason allowed. And now, at last, she had said goodbye. But grief does not vanish with farewell. It lingers, etched into the bones, carried in every breath. For days, perhaps weeks, she would still search the water, still sing her low, mournful songs. The pod would remain close, their voices blending with hers, reminding her she was not alone. Yet nothing could fill the absence left by the calf. The sea itself seemed changed by her mourning. Every wave felt heavier, every current slower, as though the ocean too had listened to her cries. Perhaps it had, for the ocean is not merely water and salt, it is memory. It holds the echoes of every life born and lost within it, and now it held hers as well. The last goodbye was not an end, but a transformation. Her calf was gone, but its story endured in her memory, in the songs of her pod, in the hearts of those who had borne witness. Scientists who recorded her vigil would carry it into papers and lectures. Fishermen who saw her would whisper it to their children. And across the world, those who heard her tale would feel a truth that needed no translation. Love and grief are not ours alone. As the stars emerged overhead, scattering light across the endless sea, the mother swam forward, her dorsal fin breaking the water in weary rhythm. She was alive, though her heart was fractured. She was part of the ocean still, though she had given a piece of herself to the abyss. And though her calf now rested in silence, the mother carried something beyond death, an unbreakable bond, carved forever into the waves. This was her last goodbye. The ocean is vast, eternal, and indifferent. Its waves rise and fall without pause, carrying life and death in equal measure. Yet within its endless expanse, a single story can ripple outward, touching beings far beyond the reach of the tide. The story of the mother orca and her lost calf was one such story, a testament not only to the fragility of life, but to the enduring power of love. After her final goodbye, the mother did not return immediately to the rhythms of survival. She swam slowly, her great body heavy with both fatigue and sorrow. Her pod followed, close but respectful, surrounding her in silence. From time to time, she released long, low calls into the water songs that no longer sought her calf, but mourned its absence. They were laments, drawn from the deepest part of her being, resonating through the sea like prayers etched in sound. Scientists listening through hydrophones described the notes as extended mourning signals, but those who truly listened felt something more. It was the echo of grief, a sound so raw that it cut across species, bypassing logic and reaching straight into the human heart. For days afterward, she remained quieter than before. She swam with less urgency, sometimes falling behind the pod, her eyes distant. Her companions stayed near, offering subtle nudges and accompanying calls, reminders that she was not alone. Among orcas, family is never abandoned. Her grief was shared, not erased. And yet, in her sorrow, there was strength. Though she had lost her calf, she had revealed something extraordinary, something that humans, for all their words and philosophies, often struggle to grasp, that love is not bound by survival. It does not end where life ends. It carries on, defying reason, enduring beyond death itself. Her vigil had not saved her calf, but it had transformed her grief into a story witnessed across the seas. Fishermen who had seen her whispered of her devotion, their hardened voices breaking as they spoke of the sight. Scientists who studied her behavior felt their data shift into something greater, something that demanded reverence as well as analysis. And around the world, as her story spread, people recognized themselves in her sorrow. The boundary between human and animal grew thinner. Here was proof that grief was not a uniquely human burden. Here was proof that love, in its purest form, was universal. A mother whale had carried her dead calf for 10 days, starving herself, exhausting herself, refusing the logic of nature, because love is never logical, it is eternal. As the days passed, she began to heal. Slowly, her calls grew softer, her movements steadier. She hunted again, guided by the pod, finding sustenance in the cold, abundant waters. Her strength returned, though her heart bore scars. She would carry the memory of her calf for the rest of her life, as all mothers do, etched, not in words, but in song. The ocean itself seemed to carry her story. The waves that had borne her cries now spread them outward, carrying whispers of her vigil into the deep. Perhaps other pods, far across the sea, heard the echoes and understood. Perhaps they answered in their own way, joining the chorus of grief that binds all living creatures together. For humans who heard her story became more than biology. It became a mirror. It asked questions that lingered long after the waves had stilled. If love can drive a whale to defy hunger and exhaustion, how much more should it guide us? If grief can bind an orcapod together, why should it not bind humanity as well? The mother orca did not know she had taught these lessons. She did not know her vigil had become a parable for the world above the waves. All she knew was that she had loved, and that love had endured beyond death. In her refusal to let go, she had shown that love does not stop at survival. It stretches further, deeper, unbroken, like the sea itself. And so, in the endless blue, she swam on. Her child was gone, but her devotion remained, a current as powerful as any tide. She carried it with her, and through her, the ocean carried it too. Love beyond death, that was her legacy.